G'day, you're listening to the Virtual Staff Room and this is episode 45, Blocks and Filters. Hi, thanks for joining us. My name is Chris Betcher. In this episode of the Virtual Staff Room, we're talking with four educators from different parts of the world. We've got Brett Moller from Queensland in Australia, Bruce Fuda from down in Canberra, who happens to be in Sydney at the moment, Ashley Proud, also from Queensland, and Carolyn Foote, a librarian from Texas in the US. And the topic for this discussion is all about blocking and filtering and the idea that schools need to somehow protect their children from what's on the internet, so they say. And so we explore a few issues in here about what different schools actually do regarding filtering and who controls those filters, and we'll try and look at some of the pros and cons of filtering. When is filtering justified? How much filtering is too much filtering? Is it bad to be too open? Is it bad to be too closed? And really, what are the consequences either way? No matter which way you look at this argument, you've somehow got to find a balance point in the middle, and where is that right balance point? So I don't know we actually get to any solutions, but we certainly toss around some interesting questions, and that's really the whole point of discussions like this. I think we've got some really interesting expertise in the room here talking about this blocking and filtering, and like I say, I think we raise more questions than we answer, but it's a good discussion. So without any more delay, I hope you enjoy this one. It's kind of nice to be back in the groove of doing some podcasts. It's been a while. So I hope you enjoy episode 45. Today we have four wonderful people to talk about this whole idea of filtering and blocking and looking at how schools manage how their kids get access to the internet. And so just ladies first, we have Carolyn Foote. Tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you do.
I'm Carolyn Foote, and I'm a librarian at a high school in Austin, Texas. I've been dealing with the issue of filtering for a long time and trying to find constructive ways to deal with it.
Excellent. Fantastic. And heading a little bit north from here, we've got who's furthest? No, who's closest? That'd be you, Brett, in Brisbane. No, in Gold Coast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. So my name is Brett Moller, and I'm Director of IT at King's Christian College on the Gold Coast in beautiful Queensland. So this was just something that I've already headed back to work a little bit, just a week early, just to have a chat to some of the guys. We've just implemented some new filtering and things, so trying to get my head around it all.
Cool. Excellent.
Yep.
No, that's good. And just point out to people that you are in fact calling on your phone, and so you're coming in over a 3G connection. So we'll make that disclaimer, just like they put on the bottom of messages. You know, this was sent with an iPhone.
Yeah.
Please excuse the lousy typing.
Please excuse the weird sound effects.
No, so far it's very good. Heading a little bit further north, we have Ashley Proud. G'day, mate.
Hi, how you going?
Good. Tell us about you and what you do.
I teach Year 7 at McDowell State School, which is on the north side of Brisbane. We're in a one-to-one laptop program. It'll be our third year this year, in 2 weeks' time. And this is an issue which I have some interesting thoughts about.
Good. Can't wait to hear them.
I don't know if they're going to be constructive or I should put a disclaimer, like you were talking about the iPhone disclaimer, that these opinions are my own, not my employees. So
we can put that on everyone's.
So, yes,
I think we need to.
I think so.
So please don't fire me on Monday.
Yeah, because I have some. I don't know. We'll see how we go with the conversation.
Excellent. Good. And normally in Canberra, but currently in Sydney, we have Bruce Fuda. G'day, Bruce.
Hi, everyone. So, normally teaching at a government school in the ACT. And, my role is to not only teach and manage learning technologies in the school, but to also deal with this issue when teachers come up against our walls and our blocking. So, and some interesting ideas at my end, and some hopefully some practical workarounds that we've been able to use as well.
Excellent. Well, talking as a guy who's on his iPad at the moment, coming through some non-obvious ways on the Sydney University network, I'm looking forward to your workarounds. And just to sort of hijack the conversation there for a sec, Bruce, just tell us what you're doing at the moment, because it's really interesting.
Okay, so at the moment I'm at the National Computer Science Summer School, which is held every year here at the University of Sydney. They get about, 90 kids from across the country, and they all come in, and over 10 days they learn a bit about either embedded systems programming or Python agile web development programming. And it's a fantastic, this is my second year now, so it's a fantastic program, and you can find more about it online at the NCSS website. So we'll include that in the notes for the show, maybe as a bit of an aside.
No, that'd be great. That'd be great. And I have to say, I've heard about the National Computer Science School for a number of years now, and I've always thought that should be something I'd get involved in. And I saw a video of it this year, and you were in the video as a little promo.
Yes, yes, I was.
And it actually inspired me to write to James Curran, who runs the program, and say, is there any room for me to get involved? And he wrote back, and he very kindly offered me a spot, but it was kind of a live-in thing for 10 days, and that was just not going to fly at the moment. So maybe next year.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But it looks like a lot of fun. All right, so the topic on the table today, which, and in fact, you actually suggested it, Brett, so you just want to tell us where this came from?
Sure. So, we run a one-to-one laptop program as well at our school. And when I started, was it 3 years ago, about 3 years ago this month, we had a really interesting filtering policy that basically said that everything was blocked unless it was approved, which you can imagine what that does. So we very quickly changed that, and over time we've what I believe we've got much better policies now. But I guess it reared its head once again. We just installed a new product which allows us, or gives us the option to monitor, block, and do all those sorts of things with devices that are school devices in the hands of our students and teachers, off campus as well as on campus. Mm-hmm. So no matter what network they're connected to, the actual device does the filtering, which of course has its pros and cons. And so I just think it's an interesting topic to have a chat about, because now we are in the technology has got to the point where we can do some pretty intense filtering off campus as well as on campus, which raises a number of really interesting issues for how we're actually educating kids appropriately about this. So
it's one of those things where just because you can doesn't mean you should. So
well, that's right. And I think I sent a tweet out about it just before the Christmas break, and I sort of said, here's a video demoing what this thing can do. Sorry, there's a truck driving past.
I was going to say, who's vacuuming?
I thought that was me, but it's not,
I thought it was vacuum.
I've never seen a street sweeper drive past my house, but anyway.
There you go.
We set this tweet. I set the tweet out because I saw this video, and the product. Not only can the product filter from off campus, it has this feature in it that will actually start to filter chats. So, like, if I made a Facebook status that defamed my employer or used a few naughty words, it actually would not allow that Facebook status to go live. It goes that far.
Wow.
So, and I sent the video out, and I don't know if I'll name the product, but look, it's impressive technology. It certainly can do some amazing things, and it was more of a question to a lot of people. Well, is this a good thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, okay. So that's the type of topic on the table then, is this whole idea of filtering and blocking, and what schools actually allow to pass through their networks, and what are the policies around that, and what are the technologies that can control that. So I think it should make an interesting discussion. We might just sort of kick the thing off by just maybe going around to everyone and just getting a snapshot of what actually happens in your place, because we've got, I think, 4 very different kind of school environments here. So we might start again, or let's do ladies first again.
Well, I'm at a large public high school in the States, in Texas. And our school has 2 sort of networks. We have a guest network. We have a one-to-one iPad implementation this year for our juniors and seniors. So we have devices that go on and off campus. And then we also have a wireless network within the building that's filtered. And so currently The filtering decisions are made by someone in our IT department. That's our infrastructure side, not our instructional tech department. And we're doing some work to change that. I'm a big advocate, actually, of that as a librarian, of course, that control resting more in the hands of the librarians and the instructional technologists, because they're really the ones that are interacting with the classroom teachers and the students more directly.
Yeah, it's something I hear too often, is that the filters are controlled by people who are technologists, not teachers, not educators. Ashley, now you're in a state system, so you really are at the whim of what the policy is for the state government, right?
Our system is globally filtered through our whole state. So mine's really easy. Our decisions are made by somebody. I don't know. You know what I mean? There are basically, when sites are blocked, they're blocked. If you want to get them unblocked, you have to apply to get them unblocked, and good luck with that. So it's
your employer, who I won't name, but I'm sure anyone could work it out, has a reputation for being a little bit strict about this stuff.
Yeah, look, if I take it, I'm going to use my words quite carefully here. I get very, very frustrated by it. I was having a conversation with one of our high-profile e-learning people about it, and he made a point to me, which is true. If I worked in, for example, we were at a conference and this teacher was talking about how back in England, they don't block anything. They YouTube, nothing's blocked. And their whole philosophy, philosophy is, if the kids see the word FU whatever, sort of thing, well, we educate them that that's not a good word. And I sort of thought that made a lot of sense to me when I was hearing this. And then the point that this other colleague was making was that, we work for a huge organisation, like, education, I won't say my employer's name, is our whole state is 50,000 odd teachers, I think, and if one thing goes wrong, it's on the front page of our local paper, of our state newspaper, and it's huge dramas. So I can see the reasoning for filtering, but for example, if my kids are doing a unit of work on medieval Europe and you search for medieval Europe weapons, a lot of those sites are blocked, which I can't really understand, to be honest. But I can see both sides of the argument, but yeah, it's bloody frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine. Brett, you're in an independent sector school, so you're not at the whim of the system telling you how things have to work.
No, not at all.
As the IT director, I imagine you get to make those decisions, or at least have a fair sway in them.
Yeah, absolutely. So our structure is basically, we have a very strong education program, I guess, just as Ashley was saying there. Pretty much every single assembly we have some sort of education thing on cyber safety, or just sometimes I think it's just common sense little activities we do with the kids, and educating the kids constantly on what the issues are. We talk a lot about social networking and all that. So our policies at the moment, we block obviously pornography, adult images, and really that's about it. We have the debate around social networking at the moment, and our system's set up in a way that we can actually say, well, if the teacher believes that particular social networking is appropriate for the coursework, then that's fine. We'll allow that to be open on a case by case. So, I would love to have it open permanently, because I just think it sort of defeats the purpose of social networking if it's only open at certain times. So for my media, I teach senior media studies, and for my media students, it's open pretty much permanently for those kids. For different media activities. And I know our art teacher has really embraced it, trying to get our kids, engaging with artists around the world using social media. So that's where we're at with it. I think we're constantly having to gauge, as Ashley said, it becomes big news if a kid does something silly or something terrible happens. And the media love to target independent schools just as much as anyone else, I think.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, so I think we've got a big bullseye on our back sometimes. And plus, our culture at our school is, we're an independent Christian school, so parents send their kids to our school with a particular ethos and philosophy on life. And we have to do a big job in educating our parents. We've got, we'll have parents that, quite have common sense and will say, the kids don't have their laptops in their bedroom. My teenage son's not allowed to do that. Whereas other parents will have the extreme view that, their kids will be kids, so, they just do what they do.
Yeah.
So that's the big one. And now we're in a position where we're saying, okay, so how far does the duty of care go? Like, should I turn on filtering at home and then make it my responsibility to be blocking all the naughty things when the kid's at home as well, just because the technology says we sort of can. Should we be doing it?
Yeah, I have dealt with a lot of requests from parents who ask that same thing. Can you show us how we can filter our internet connection at home? And I must admit, my thinking is that the filters need to be in the kids' heads. And if that's not where the filters are, then really, it's always going to be whack-a-mole.
Yeah, and that's fine that the parents might ask you to do that, and like I actually agree, it's more about education. But where does the line get drawn? Like, where is the school's responsibility? Where do we stop and where do we say it's not our responsibility?
Right.
Yeah.
If we're talking about filtering at home through, it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm very surprised to hear that concept, because I think that although a lot of parents here might want those sort of parental controls or some sort of controls on their students' computers.
Sorry, Carolyn, when you say that concept, which one are you referring to there?
Filtering at home.
Oh, right.
Filtering a device once it leaves the school, filtering students at home. I don't know, the way we've handled our one-to-one iPad implement is that the students and parents had to sign an acceptable use policy. They agreed this is a school device, it should be used appropriately. The parents had to sign off on it if they wanted the student to have the device. And so the onus is really on the parents and the students to sort of self-regulate.
Yeah.
And they've agreed to that. But I think you're very right. It becomes this very wobbly line of where do we draw the privacy lines if we start filtering once a device leaves the school building.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone would say that everything should be open and like there should be no blockages of pornography or anything. I don't think anyone would really go down that line. I don't think.
No.
I could be wrong, but then the other extreme is to block everything. And you're right, it's the line in the middle. Where should that line be? We haven't really got to Bruce, so I might just flip over to Bruce for a second. Just tell us, what do you do, mate?
Okay, so I'm in a government school, like Ashley, in Australia, but unlike his employer, mine's quite small. So we're probably the smallest educational jurisdiction, or close to. And as a result, there's actually quite a lot of flexibility built into the way that things work for us. So we have a filtering system that's in place across the entirety of the territory. The difference in this case, though, is that schools have a level of control that we can then assign to individual categories. So we can categorise websites and put them in categories that would be, say, not allowed for primary schools but are allowed for high schools. Mm-hmm. Other things might be allowed for secondary colleges but not the high schools. And individual high schools may choose to allow a category that another high school does not. So we can differentiate access to teachers and students, which we generally do. And for example, I think this is the model we have in place at the moment, we could choose to allow YouTube for teachers open at all times, but allow students only after a teacher authenticates for them, in which case they would then have access to YouTube for the duration of the
Bruce,
lesson or a time frame.
I dig that. I understand how it's completely appropriate to have, that tiered level of access, so to speak. What I'm curious about is who makes the decisions about it. Is there a really clear policy? So when a website is put up and says should it be in or should it be out, is there a really clear set of guidelines by which that decision is made? My sense in too many places is that too many people just go, oh yeah, I think it's probably no good, and like it's not really clear as to why that decision's being made.
Okay, so there are two components to it. The first is that every site is initially automatically categorized by like the technology in the program. So it'll scan the text and make a guess at what the category is. So this is a crime site, for example.
Right.
And then it'll be up to me at the school level, or I have the controls.
So that first level is being done algorithmically.
That's right, yes.
Wow, okay.
And then at the next level, I can say, well, crime sites are allowed, or crime sites are not allowed, or crime sites require teacher authentication. Now, if a teacher visits a site and it says this is a crime site, but it's not, then we can reclassify it. So we can say, well, it's not a crime site, it's a site on historical fact or something. I don't know all the categories off the top of my head, but by doing that, because that's an allowed category, it will automatically become allowed. So look, the algorithm is pretty good. It catches most things and categorizes them appropriately. Most of our problems are associated with, similar to Ashley, the Middle Ages, from a history sense, and anything to do with health and sex ed is particularly problematic. Feminism also tends to struggle a bit, because any page that has a lot of female keywords in it tends to get classified as pornography, or at least the search terms do. And I guess it's because a lot of the pornographic sites do tend to put as many keywords for women in their meta tags. So occasionally those sorts of issues will come up. The control is, like, the actual process for submitting a change is not as tedious as Ashley's, but it's not an instant turnaround. Sometimes it can be half an hour, sometimes it can be overnight.
And is that temporary or permanent?
That's a permanent change.
Right.
So it's a little frustrating and it's not ideal, but at least it's a more workable situation than some of the larger jurisdictions have. And if we're unsure, like if I'm unsure, if it's not an obvious one, then I'll take it to the school executive and we'll make the decision as to whether or not a category should be open, closed, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. So, and just for the record, the school I work at, probably closest to Brett's from what I'm hearing, is in that, we have a sort of a blacklist of known, pornographic, violence, racial hate, blah, 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 all the obvious stuff, and we'll block that, and then pretty much everything else is open. So YouTube is open, Facebook is open, all of the social stuff is open, with the exception, I think, of FormSpring, and that's only because so much of that can be done anonymously. And we tended to have a lot of kids, or not a lot, but we had a few kids sort of being a little bit inappropriate on FormSpring because they had that anonymous layer. So we decided to get rid of that. And the only other thing we block is we block photos on Facebook, but purely for bandwidth restrictions, because it just otherwise would be overrun. It's just too much on there. It hits us worse than YouTube, funnily enough.
Yeah, okay. We saw that.
But that's a girls' school.
Yeah. Well, we actually found with the whole YouTube thing that all we had to do was give the kids data caps, and that, to me, I mean, we give our kids 200 meg a day of data, and unless but we also have systems in place that if you're doing a subject like mine in media, and you do need to get some larger files or filters or Photoshop filters and stuff like that, the teacher can easily just give you extra credit, extra data and stuff like that.
I was going to say, so how's that work if a kid burns through all their data doing, I don't know, looking at a YouTube video or whatever, and then they turn up for a period 5 class and say, oh, sorry, I can't do the work because I've got no data left?
It's interesting because we actually, that was a big issue to start with, but no kid...
Oh, you've siloed.
Yeah, to the help desk and say, I need more data, or go to the teacher and say, I need more data when... Oh, sorry. Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's come through now.
Hello?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's
okay,
really
good.
funny.
We... No kid wants to go to ask the teacher for more data when the teacher can see their logs. So a kid will come and say, "I need more data," and I'll pull up their logs and say, "Well, mate, you've just been sitting watching The Simpsons on YouTube all day."
But doesn't
there's a consequence for that.
Doesn't that sort of, I don't know, I know a lot of our teachers would get really dirty about the fact that suddenly now they're doing IT, like, you know, they're running the IT stuff. It's their responsibility now to check the logs and to know who's what and to...
No, in that situation, I see that as a classroom management issue. It's not an IT issue, because the kid's done the wrong thing as far as, you know, in that previous period or during your period, he's been stuffing around doing the wrong thing, just like he may have been doing with a pencil and paper. So you're going to manage that with a behaviour consequence. And we don't use IT. Like, the kid will still get credit to do his work.
Yeah.
You know, give him another 50 meg, 100 meg, whatever. And it's such a simple thing for the teachers to do, they don't mind.
Yeah.
But they get a behaviour consequence. That's the big thing we had to work on, was that, well, the kid's done the wrong thing behaviourally. It wasn't the technology, it was their behaviour. So, you know, refer to behaviour manual, whatever it is.
Yeah.
More so. But we actually found that kids became more responsible in managing their data because, yeah, as we all know, all us Australians know, we've got data caps everywhere.
Yeah.
And kids here actually get the concept of, well, I have to manage my data.
Yeah.
And they know that, you know, 200 meg a day is a pretty generous data cap.
Right. Yeah.
So it was an issue to start with, but it's really slowed down.
That's a totally alien concept to students here in the States.
Data caps, yeah.
Right. And, you know, I come at this from kind of a different angle because I'm a librarian. And we really have had to deal with the issue of, you know, we're coming at it from book censorship. And what if someone comes in and wants to censor a book that we have in our collection that we know is perfectly valuable or legitimate? What are our processes? And most libraries in the States anyway have a process where the question goes to a committee, the committee reads the book, the committee makes a recommendation, you know, and it goes through a process like that.
Is that statewide, district-wide, school-wide? Like, at what level does that come into play?
Well, the committees would be like campus-based,
okay.
But this sort of policy is pretty standard across every school in the States. I mean, it's a local school board policy,
right?
But they're all pretty identical from district to district.
So if one district says a book should be banned or a book is okay, then all the other districts would pretty much go along with it?
No. It's a local decision.
Right.
Completely local. What's similar is the policy. And the policy says, you know, you take a written complaint and then assemble a committee. And the policies are pretty similar from place to place. But coming at it from that point of view, you know, I take the point of view that the way that filtering should be addressed in schools is the decisions should be made by a committee and not like moment by moment kinds of decisions, but decisions like what categories are we going to filter as a school district, you know, what authorities are we going to give teachers, what are we going to give students, what primary, secondary. And the reason for that is I feel like there's several things that go on here. One is fear. You know, if you're the IT director or the person in charge of the filter and making those decisions, if something slips by, then, or if you make a decision that's not, you know, that some would consider too lenient, it's your job on the firing line. You know, you are the person standing there. And so it tends to make, at least here in the States, it tends to make IT directors or people that are managing the filter pretty fear-based because they're going to err on the conservative side because it's their job, you know, it's their name, it's their reputation, it's their job. When it's a whole committee making those sorts of decisions, that really takes that element out a great deal because you have a consensus and you have, you know, there's no one person, the media or the parents can point the finger at and say, well, this was your decision, this is your fault, you messed up. And so I think there's some power in having the decision being made that way.
Yeah.
I also know, being a librarian, that I tend to err on the side of freedom of access for young adults, particularly. That's a tenet of the American Library Association, and I think that they deserve their privacy. They deserve, the right to seek the information they seek. The example you were giving about hate crimes, that's often filtered in school districts here. We have students that research hate crimes all the time,
Yeah.
and they can't get to any sites because everything's blocked. They're not trying to perpetuate a hate crime. They're just trying to do research. So,
Could a kid in the States come back and say, like, is it a Second Amendment or whatever it is, with the right to freedom of speech, that their ability to be exposed to freedom of speech is being restricted? I don't want to go all lawyery on you, but I'm just curious.
No, it's very interesting how that comes down in the States. For example, libraries are pretty protected for freedom of access, at least to literature. And but journalism departments, like school newspapers, Supreme Court decision really limits their freedom of expression. Right. So the law is pretty inconsistent.
Sorry, Brett, I think I cut you off before you say something.
The thing is, and having talked to some of the filter manufacturers, the guys who build these products to filter, one of the things the guys we went with, they have a basic duty of care filter, and I went looking through it, and it is basically what we talked about, blocking pornography, illegal sites, those sorts of things. And we had a discussion about who decides what duty of care is. Did you talk to lawyers? Did you whatever? And these guys actually said it was quite difficult to find any lawyer or that was willing to put their name to this is what duty of care should contain when it comes to the internet.
Right.
And it's such a minefield because you've got no idea what kids might come across. But we had a previous librarian, when the iPad came out and I had mine, I took it to my librarian and he was fascinated with the e-books and he's going through it and he turned to me and he just said to me, where's the red dot? And I said, what do you mean the red dot? And he says, how have you worked here and not known about the red dot system? In his library, he had a system where anything that had a red dot on it meant that the primary age children weren't allowed to touch it. And so he was wondering how the red... Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I mean, if I was in primary school, anything with a red dot would have been the first thing I went for.
Right.
But, so
why can't the whole internet be a red dot on the system?
That's what I said to him. But, that actual conversation sparked our education side of things too, talking to the kids about, okay, well, you're going to come across text, you're going to come across imagery or whatever that will be appropriate or inappropriate, and you need to be able to learn to filter that yourself as a person.
Right.
With your own beliefs or your stance and on these issues. And it's quite interesting when you're open with teenagers in particular, how open teenagers are to actually hear from adults and hear from people as to why is spending 6 hours of your day sitting on YouTube watching cats fly around on fans not constructive use of your time.
Mate, that cat flying around on the fan is a great video, you got to admit.
I'm sure between us we've all watched it a few times, but spending that time with the kids, but to actually help them with that. If as soon as we start to use the technology to do our job for us, we're going to fall short. And when we installed our new filter, this would probably be known to folks in the US, but when we installed our filter, we're trying to work out by default why was it that certain things were being blocked and coming up as an alert. And we found that the word Monday was actually being filtered because apparently the word Monday was a racist term for African Americans.
Really?
And I'm like, yeah.
I'd be blocking the word Friday so you didn't see Rebecca Black.
Well, it's true. But all of a sudden, the preppies can't learn about the days of the week. But so that took, I don't know how long for my system administrator to track down that little problem. I think in the end he had to actually call the company and they said, oh, yeah, common problem. It's the word Monday. And, it's apparently if you look at the Urban Dictionary, it gives you some information on that. But, and this was the conversation I had with my IT team. I said to the guys, see, we can't use the technology to do our job for us.
Right, right.
there's a lot of work that the teachers have to do. And I think our IT guys, I know a lot of them get a bad rap for being control freaks, but there was actually a lot of relief taken. They had a lot of relief when the boss actually walked in and said, look, education is a teacher's job. It is the school's board job, the school and the board of the school to set these policies. It's not your job to set these policies. We will set them, you enforce them, and we'll direct you as to what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and you don't need to worry about anything more. And
wow, that's a really
guys,
grown-up approach, isn't it?
well, they loved it. I mean, these guys love it because they just know that if a kid's doing the wrong thing, and they just have to report that, and that's it. There's nothing more that they have to do. It seems to me crazy that we give someone who's actually not qualified the job of deciding what's appropriate and not appropriate.
Yeah.
Right.
And we certainly can't give that job just to a device by default.
I think we're conceding it to a company that we really don't know that much about. We don't know how those decisions were made, and at least the companies we deal with, a lot of them guard their lists like gold because they have competitors and they don't want to release the list of what's being blocked. So it's really sort of blind faith that the categories they're putting things in are what we would want. So we're sort of giving over that responsibility to a business.
I think here in Australia, as far as I'm aware, the whitelist and the blacklist are government published, and everyone has access to see what's on there. Is that your understanding of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And what I guess what I think is really funny about that is the difference in lists then becomes a differentiator for a product as opposed to the effectiveness of what it's able to do.
Yeah.
So I would have thought that a common list would actually encourage the products to be much more suited to what the end goal is, which is providing some sort of protection for students from inappropriate content. So that seems
set
like
a benchmark
really
on the stuff that ought to be blocked, and then innovate on top of that.
That's exactly right. So it seems like a very, very odd competition element for them to use, and it doesn't make any sense at all to me. But
the bit that I don't get about all this, though, is we as I say, we don't filter very much. So I think we've kind of maybe this acorn has fallen from the tree and hit us on the head, and we've kind of realised this. But 80% of our school population carry 3G phones.
Yeah. Right.
So what's the point of blocking everything on our school network when they just walk outside and get it on their phone anyway?
Duty of care. Duty of care. That's the point, and that's the only point. That's the only reason why. Is duty care.
So I'm curious now, why do...
In my opinion. Sorry, not my employer's opinion. In my opinion.
Why does Telstra and Optus and or in the States, Verizon and AT&T or whoever else is providing that 3G coverage, why don't they have a duty of care?
Freedom of the internet. Like, isn't that what that SOFA thing is all about? SOPA,
right.
Whatever it is. Isn't that basically... That's the whole gist of that. That's a whole different ballgame altogether.
That's something slightly different. But this is the very point that... this is something that's just open up a whole other topic of discussion, and we won't go down this path. But this whole idea of, talking about bring your own device to a school, and people say, well, that'll never work. Well, that's actually what your internet service provider does. They don't care what device you connect with, and in terms of filtering, well, they don't filter. They just give you the whole internet and leave it up to you to decide which bits you should or shouldn't go to.
But am I right in saying that, particularly here in Australia, you have to be 18 to purchase a mobile phone? And activate a mobile phone?
I don't know.
Not my
to
understanding
activate
of it.
In your own name?
To activate a mobile phone, don't you have to be 18?
I'm not
because
sure
I would assume that's the... Yeah. Anyway, but we say the parent bought. I had a parent call me last year and said, my kid accessed Facebook at school and uploaded this thing at school, and I just pulled up her daughter's logs and I said, no, your daughter actually hasn't been on Facebook today, and said, does she have a mobile phone? The mother goes, oh yeah, we bought her a phone for her birthday, and I said, well, what type of phone is it? Oh, it's an iPhone. I said, she's got Facebook on that phone. And the mother had no idea.
Really?
Absolutely no idea. And I said, if she's going to upload something silly on Facebook, she's going to do it through her phone. She's not going to do it at school.
Absolutely.
Right.
She's not that stupid.
Yeah.
The parent provided that. So, isn't it that becomes the parent's responsibility? Now, as a school, I've provided a device, or it's a part of our school curriculum that all kids have a device, does that mean then the duty of care lies on me, or is it the fact that the parents enrolled their kid at your school, that the parent has accepted the fact that this is the danger that may be involved in using a device? Just like parents sign an excursion permission form, or parents give the okay for boys to go play rugby and smash into each other every Friday afternoon. There's dangers in that. Does the duty of care lie on the school 100%, or is there a partnership there with the parents?
It's a crazy world we live in.
It's a tricky problem, isn't it?
And I think one of the other elements that differentiates, for example, the independent sector with the government sector is it's easy for someone to turn around and, in theory, say, well, if you don't agree to the policy of the independent school, i.e. you're not willing to accept that risk, then you simply don't go to it. Whereas in the government system, if someone was to say, well, we don't agree with the school's policy in a bring your own device situation, but you're the local school and therefore that student has a priority enrolment in your area, then you really can't say no. So I think in our case, the duty of care issue that Ashley mentioned really does drive a lot of those decisions. And I think it's probably safer legally in terms of avoiding the risk for the government to put in place some sort of filtering and err on the side of conservatism rather than, leaving things open.
I would say the duty of care rules every decision.
And I think you're right, and it does, and it probably should to some extent. I am curious, and again, I'm just playing devil's advocate with this stuff, right? But I'm curious. I wonder what the sort of the statistically, mathematically viable sort of risk actually is,
Right.
Yep.
And I always tell people, we leave educators alone in the room with children, 5-year-olds.
And that's a risk.
And that boy, I would
Mum
say
and Dad
that
drives them to school in the car in the morning. That's a risk.
Right. But I mean, we trust educators in rooms alone with our children, driving them to a volleyball tournament out of town, traveling with them out of the country. And yet we don't think that, they're responsible enough, our students are responsible enough to have access to social networking sites on the internet. It just doesn't make any sense. It's inconsistent.
Well, our employer actually has policies about contact with children outside of school hours via social media. And if you do it, basically you could be up for disciplinary actions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and I don't think you're alone there in the world. I think there's many places in the world that take that kind of approach.
There's another interesting side to the argument too, that maybe I'm a little bit radical on this thought, but we've had cases in education for years where kids have come back 10, 15, 20 years later and sued a school because they can't write properly or they can't read, and that was the school's fault because the school didn't provide the service that they said they should.
Yep.
Now we're in this information age. Could we possibly face a problem in 10, 15, 20 years' time where a kid comes back and says, I'm unemployable?
It's funny you should say that because I don't know whether I've told this story on the podcast before or not, but my son went to a public school here in Sydney, and the network was
good on
almost,
you for supporting public education.
Yeah, no worries. And so he'd go to school, and I'd say to him sometimes, I'd ask him questions about school and how's it going and what are you doing online, because I'm curious about that sort of stuff. And he just basically said, look, we don't go online. It's pointless. Everything's blocked. There's just no point going online. Now, I think the situation in my state has changed slightly in the last 12 months or so. But it was at the point when he was at school where he just didn't bother. And I actually rang the Department of Education here in New South Wales at one point and asked to be put through to the people who control the filters, and eventually got onto some department, and some guy answered the phone, and I said, look, I'm a parent of a child in your system and I have a complaint about your filtering. And you could just hear him in the background getting his little pen and paper out ready to write down the list of sites that I wanted blocked.
Yep.
And I said, my concern is that my son will graduate from school and actually won't have learnt the things that I feel he needs to learn, important things about digital citizenship, because you're not providing him an opportunity to do so. And the guy went, he didn't see that coming.
Yeah, exactly. And we've actually floated this past our parents and said, do you understand how important this is? We can show you all the statistics and we can show you all those, the shift videos and all those things that demonstrate why this is important. But when you throw in and this is why we allow YouTube and things like that, and we're trying to teach your kids to do the right thing and be sensible, many still struggle to make that connection. But I don't understand how that's important. It's like the citizenship stuff. And I try and say to them, it'd be like saying, okay, it's okay to go play rugby, but we're not going to teach you how to tackle properly. We're not going to teach you how to actually play the game properly, or even allow you to wear any sort of protective gear or anything like that. We're just going to say, go out to the field, go for it, go nuts and play. Whereas we seem to put so many rules and regulations around everything else.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I'd like to add here is I don't think the risk and the consequence component is restricted to just here. And as an example, I suppose, is one of the things that our school organised very recently was a simple walk around the lake as a way of raising the profile on cybersecurity. The kids were all out there wearing shirts saying, we're doing this to raise the profile. Now, reasonably painless activity, bus the kids to a starting point, walk around the lake, have a barbecue, come home. To actually do that event required a 13-page risk assessment that actually included things right down to dehydration. Now, you factor in the fact that you have to do something that seems that ridiculous for what is a very, very low risk event, and you can see that they're so concerned about a consequence that on a numerical scale you might score a consequence of accessing something inappropriate and it hitting the media and damaging the profile of the education system as a score of 1,000. It wouldn't matter if the risk is 0.00001. The fact that the actual consequence is so high tends to mean that they refuse to acknowledge or accept that risk, and that's the problem I think we face. Is whilst mathematically or statistically it makes no sense, it's that fear of the consequence actually being realised that leads to the decision being made, which I don't agree with at all. But it seems to be the reality of the situation, at least in the government system.
So what happened? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if someone was to bring a case on the internet side of things, and they were to bring a case that said, my child accessed inappropriate content at your school, you have to prove damages. And in order to prove damages, because I looked at some stuff that was inappropriate, or I looked at some stuff that caused psychological damage. My wife's in psychology, and basically, in order for those things to set in and to cause psychological damage, it's got to be repetitive and over and over and over again. Yeah. And you've got to think, if a kid's going to develop a habit or an addictive habit, or just based on what they're doing on the internet, surely that's going to be something that's developed outside of school. Like it'd be hard for those sorts of things to be developed in the school time.
I'd like to think our kids had more resilience than being psychologically damaged by the F word or a few titty pictures.
Exactly. So
agreed. But from a sensationalist media perspective, that doesn't matter. The fact is, as soon as it happens, it's on the front page, and it doesn't matter whether the case is thrown out of court. It's the fact that it appears on the front page that really has the public system, I guess a little bit reluctant to make those sorts of decisions, because we're seeing a fall in numbers in government system, but at least in the territory, and so anything that's going to smear the profile or smear the perception of public education is a negative thing. So there's a lot of political sort of aspects to the situation as well, and I don't think it is purely legal. It's the perception side of things more so than the legal result.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that happens in districts in the States too, because the law is pretty flexible actually, but it's often used as an excuse. Oh, well, we've got to filter that but then when you read what the law actually says, that's not required. So and I like to remind people too that there's the equal kind of publicity on the other side. I was just looking at a case in the States where the ACLU filed suit against a school district in Tennessee because they were censoring all gay and lesbian, transgender sites in the schools there in Nashville. And they won the case. And, there can be lawsuits on the other side for being overly restrictive. In fact, there have been a number of lawsuits. There's probably been more lawsuits filed here anyway on that side than have been filed for not filtering it enough.
There's an interesting parallel here with the notion of having a presence on social media. And, the people who look at that and go, well, that's a damaging thing. I would never want anything about me on the internet. And for others who go, well, unless you're on the internet, you don't really exist. And it's important to have a presence on the internet.
Right.
I guess it's just the way you look at it, isn't it?
But it's a really, the way you look at it. For example, there's a website out there where we're talking about like social media, which is a sort of social media one where kids can go on and give their teacher a rating and put a comment and basically defame them. And like some of the things that I've read about, look, mine's really good. I'm really happy. You know what I mean? But
my rating's really good. I'm happy with mine.
but it's horrific. Like I was reading some of my colleagues' stuff, and it's horrific. And those things, like yes, they're blocked at our school, but we're getting back to that notion of who's responsible. But some of the things these people are writing, well, who's responsible for that? Anyway, that's another topic altogether.
It is. And it's funny you should say that, mate, because I was working with some teachers recently and talking about this idea of, having a presence online and having some sort of digital footprint that
Well, we have...
And the teacher who sort of went, no, that would never happen. And I went, well...
It'd be the first search result for him, I can almost guarantee.
Google your own name. And she
exactly
did, and up it came, and it was a hate my teacher, just that's probably more accurate, a rate my teacher thing about her, and it wasn't a particularly stunning report. And that's what comes up when she types her name on the internet.
Yep.
Right.
Well, we've just... we just implemented all of our primary year levels. Every single year level has a Facebook group page, and all the parents, a huge number of parents. I think we were up to, from about kindy through to about grade 3 or 4, we're up to about 85% of the parents in those year levels are all members of that Facebook page. And the happy snaps that go up there and all that sort of thing. And that's been a huge help, because then those parents are sort of in the car park talking about how wonderful it is. They can see, streams of events and pictures from happy things on Facebook and how great it is. And all of a sudden, the car park chatter from the primary parents is all very positive social media, and that sort of hopefully impacts some of the negative stuff about what the high school parents are thinking about social media as such.
Yeah.
That
right.
seems to work really well, because it was. Just a few months into me being at my school, we found a Facebook page that said, you go to King's when ... And of course, it started all very nice and all humorous stories about the history of the school and different fun things that kids did, and then it got bad. It sort of went down the track. So first thing was, we've got to block Facebook. And I said, well, all this was done at home. Like, you look at the times of the statuses. No one wrote it at school. It was done at home or on the school bus on the way home.
Yeah.
And it sort of went viral over a weekend. And then so when we embraced it all and said, well, let's make sure our profile's on Facebook first and foremost. And when you search for us, this is what you find. And it's all positive, and we control our social media, I guess, our trend on social media.
Yep.
It swings it around really positively. It's then just helping, and then the kids see that too, and the kids see that we're projecting our brand, and them as a person is a brand too. Yep. And they should protect their brand.
Yep. We use the phrase at our school, be your own agent. And we use the example of, if Britney Spears does something stupid, her agent tries to make sure that, there's a positive spin on it. And it's the same, but you can be your own agent. You can make sure you have your own positive spin.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other interesting discussion, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And I do think that's why it's important not to overfilter is, how are we supposed to teach kids about positive uses of the internet and social media and how to have a positive digital image if we aren't allowing them and trusting them to use the site to make mistakes so that we can help them learn, what it means to have that sort of profile.
Yeah.
I think that's a big question.
Yep. As much as everyone wants to avoid risk, the notion of saying we will never, ever make a mistake, we will get this right first time and never screw it up is completely unrealistic.
Right.
Isn't there just as much chance of one of your football teams having a tragic accident? I mean, that's going to be a pretty horrific story in the newspaper one day. It's already happened. As soon as I draw the parallel all the time. The PE department love it. And I say, well, hang on, our whole PE department's a giant risk. Are you gonna block footballs at lunchtime and cricket bats and baseball bats and whatever? Because they're all a huge risk, and they're all waiting to be the next sensationalist media story.
I suppose another issue that comes up is that by actually blocking the internet and filtering it, we encourage students to undertake unsafe behaviour, like looking for proxies that are hosted in Russia and feed everything through in clear text and do all these sorts of things. And the parallel there is when we run an excursion, we don't say, we're going on an excursion from Sydney to Canberra, everyone just turn up and we'll go to these places on these days. We put the kids in the bus, we control the risk. So if you're going to block things, then kids are going to go their own way. Then you are exposing them to a risk that I would say is orders of magnitude greater. Because the reality is there's nothing that an algorithmic solution can't do it. So there's no way you can do it with manpower. Can you block all of these sites and you have absolutely no idea what information is being collected or farmed as kids are using these. I mean, some are safe, and I say that in inverted commas, but others could be doing anything. So it's an extremely dicey thing to be doing.
That's an interesting metaphor there about the bus, about, if we don't want to take the risk of putting the kids on the bus and taking them safely to one place, the alternative is that they each take their own motorcycle and go their own way.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think an interesting question in all of this too is I'm going to lose my train of thought now. Of course, I had this brilliant point to make.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that, Carol.
I just never mind. I'll think of it.
That's all right. Guys, we've been going for nearly an hour. This has been a great discussion. I think we've hit on a lot of... I don't think we've solved any of the world's problems. And I don't know how solvable this actually is. I think it is always going to come down to... I don't know. What is it going to come down to? Individual circumstances, individual values?
Yeah, the whole values debate probably makes it even more interesting because, do I have a right to inflict my values on somebody else? If you're in a government school or whatever, who decides what values are right and wrong? There's more pornography driving down between Brisbane and the Gold Coast with billboards advertising nightclubs than I've seen a kid access at school.
Yeah,
so it's slightly relative. But we just had a kid the other day, late last year, who showed me ways to get around our filters and all this kind of stuff, and how interesting it was to work out how to get around it and that. And I was like, what an amazing activity. This kid's probably learnt more in the day that took him to work it all out than he did in any class that day. But he was the one that brought it to us and said, hey, here's some problems with your filters, and it's not going to take long for the rest of us to work it out. So,
Yeah.
I think too, what I was going to say is, it's one question I have is, are ideas dangerous? I think that's what part of this boils down to. Now, the social networking and interactions with strangers and what's safe, that's one question. But just when you're talking about research, the question of, are ideas dangerous? Are they too dangerous for students to see? That's a question that I think we really need to ask. And then I also think there are some proactive things we can do. Like, we've really been trying to get our district to have a committee, for example. There are some things that can be done, or like your school using Facebook with the elementary parents. I think there's proactive things you can do to help educate the parents or to make the system a more workable one.
Yep. And I do like how, Carolyn, you were saying that, we just said a minute ago about, it comes down to people's values and whatnot, but at least I like the way you're talking about having a committee of people, so that there's at least a shared discussion about what those values might be, and it's not just resting on, one individual who's making the decision.
Right.
Good.
Well,
So the last question: does anyone? I know New South Wales DET do the at-home filtering. How far does that go? And how far should it go?
I don't know, mate. I don't know anything about how that works because I'm not part of that system.
Yeah. Well, I mean, having spoken to people that work in that system, basically they say that the filter that they have at schools, the same, it's actually tied to the device, not to the network. So if they head off to the Macca's Wi-Fi, the device is doing the actual computer's doing the filtering, not the network. Yeah.
Yeah, Ben Jones would be the guy to ask about that. He seemed to know all about that stuff. But I was going to try and get him on, but I didn't see him online.
One of the things that I think is tied into the whole bring your own device idea is the fact that I don't know if we'll actually even see schools and departments providing devices for much longer. I don't even know if that discussion is one that's worth having to some degree, because the reality is it's a more sustainable model to, if you're going to provide infrastructure, to fund the infrastructure and make it robust so that it doesn't get in the way of the educational experience, rather than constantly turning over new equipment as equipment dates. Because we all know that if you pay $400 for a netbook today, it's going to be reasonably I'd say useless to you in 2 months, maybe 3 years if you're lucky. Even if you spend, $2,000 on a souped up MacBook, you might only get 4 years out of that, 5 years out of that. So, you got to consider the sustainability of the current model, because realistically, I don't think that we'll see schools providing the machines, except maybe to those in really, really, really exceptional socioeconomic or financial circumstances beyond another couple of years.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think we're going to look back at this in 10 years' time and going, why did we waste K-Rudd money? It's just, I think bring your own device. We can still set up the network, we can still set up filtering and, make our kids safe and whatever, but I think I don't think it's when, I think it's just inevitable. I think it's more sustainable and it empowers the kids. Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I think there's a massive cultural shift that needs to take place in the education, in the way teachers think about education, because there is still a lot of this idea that, learning is still a lockstep process, that I want my class of 28 kids to all be doing the same thing at the same time.
I can tell you, if we did it at our school, the biggest issue would be, how do we connect everything up to the printer? I couldn't give two craps about as long as you say, okay, your device has to be able to do A, B, C, D, and I don't care how you do A, B, C, D. Let's rock and roll, people. You know what I mean? And I know there's not many schools. I don't know of any schools in my employer that does it, and I think it's a great model, and I think it's the way of the future.
Yeah.
Why print? Why print at all?
Oh, that's another whole issue altogether, because it has to look pretty in your wall. Because when you're a primary school teacher, your classroom has to look pretty.
Right. That's right. Can't use Google Docs that doesn't have page borders.
That's right. Google Docs. Yeah, good old Google Docs. Very, very another discussion.
I think the fact that it's really going to play into the feasibility of BYOD is the whole move to the cloud. Once we move away from the idea that we actually need anything other than a simple internet connection to be able to do our work, I think that's going to simplify things an awful lot. When we don't need printers, when we don't need Windows file shares and all that sort of nonsense, and we're just, if it's on the internet, if you can get it through a browser, then that's pretty much all you need. I think that's going to be the turning point when everyone wakens up to that.
Right.
Chris, anyone who's working in a security department in a government system now is screaming and yelling at their device if they're listening to this, because the idea of putting everything in the cloud and allowing us access to services in the cloud that are not managed at the moment is just so foreign that
I know.
security departments would die. But I agree with you. But that's the situation we're in right now. And so you're right. From a feasibility perspective, trying to rely on just a pure internet connection for what we do is just not possible.
Yeah, and it's funny though, because we have we actually have three layers in our wireless network at school, and there's one which is kind of the official one, and if you connect to that, you get printers and file shares and all the rest of it, the whole 9 yards. And we have another one called the guest network, which is obviously for people who come into the school to just connect, and all they get is an internet connection. Most of our kids will just bring their own laptops to school and connect to the guest network. And when you say, but you don't have access to all that other stuff, they go, we don't use that other stuff, We don't print that much, and we don't need to connect to stuff. It's on our hard drive.
I was in a school, probably the same employer as Ashley, who were doing some cool things with iPads, and all the kids were getting frustrated because they wanted notes on Google Docs and things like this. And I asked the teacher, I said, so how do you get around all this? How do you do this? And she said, pull your phone out and just do a search for Wi-Fi hotspots. And we came up with about 12 hotspots from mobile phones and different devices like that, all called things like, no, you can't find me, and school sucks, and my network's faster than the school network, and all these sorts of interesting names for networks. But that's how they got their schoolwork done. These grade 9 boys were writing really cool stuff with iPads and different bits and pieces, and engaged in an English class, and they're using what's ever in their pocket, and the teacher's just turning a blind eye and saying, well, how do I stop this? Yeah. And this is all good stuff.
That's exactly right.
Well, I can remember sitting in a meeting not so long ago with a certain Bruce Fuda who pulled out his laptop, connected to his mobile phone, and shared the Wi-Fi signal to the rest of the four of us sitting at the table so we could get some work done because the hotel Wi-Fi wasn't working. So that's just the way it is.
And we've got a brand new school. This government poured money into a brand new school, our flagship secondary college, and the school shares a public library. Like they share their site with a public library. And the public library internet, which is, of course, open to anyone who uses the library, has no filtering. So which network do you reckon the kids connect to?
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's a can of worms, and I really there are no simple answers. But
no,
I think over time, hopefully, it'll just all shake out, and we'll work it out.
I think you're right that the cloud is going to pose a big challenge to that. I mean, we already have students using all over the states using Dropbox and Evernote and all these storage sites, and
that's it. I don't need your stinking IT department.
Yeah. Right, and they can store whatever they want up there and just pull it down when they need it. And so how are we going to control that?
Yeah.
There's no way.
It is a big challenge.
Yes.
Well, lady and gents, I think we've been going for just about over an hour, so we really should wrap this up. But look, thanks so much for coming in, and at such short notice too. Just for those that don't know, Brett actually suggested this to me on Twitter this morning, and I said, that's a great idea. Who else can we round up? And I put a tweet out and said, who wants to talk about it? And you guys all responded, so here we are. So it just goes to show. This is the first episode of the podcast I've done in quite a while, so it's actually kind of good to be doing this. I really enjoy doing them. And it's a great bunch of people to be doing it with. So thanks for coming.
All right.
Thanks for the invite, Chris.
Very, very important issue. I think this is one of the most important issues of our generation. I don't know.
And I can see from all the people in the room, Ashley, you're probably the one that seems the most negatively affected by all this stuff too. So,
mate, when you sit there and you said your school blocks nothing, I just went, oh, that's awesome. That's just unbelievable. Anyway, that's a whole time. YouTube, how awesome would that be to have all the time like your school?
I can't imagine not having it. I don't know how people teach without
it. Exactly.
Anyway.
But I'll share another story if you want off the air.
Okay, no worries. Well, we will wrap it up. Just real quickly, we'll go around the room. Just if you guys want to just, want to tell us where you blog or Twitter or whatever, where people can find you online. So, Caroline?
I am Techno Library on Twitter. And my blog is Not So Distant Future, which is on EduBlogs. And I am on most everything as Techno Library.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Good. Thanks for joining us. Ash?
Thanks.
I am at Ashley Proud, all one word, ASHLEYPROUD on Twitter. I went through a bit with my blog. My blog's called I Am One of Those People, which has an interesting backstory, but I'll let you read it on my blog. And I actually just recently moved my blog from EduBlogs to Blogger because I wanted to be able to embed video and things like that, and I'm too cheap to pay for a pro account in EduBlogs because my wife controls all my money.
Fair enough. And I got to say, the new bloggers are looking really good. I like some of the features of the new blogger.
Yeah, no, it's a great tool. I had a challenge for myself for the last 50 days of the school year. I had to blog every day, and I think I got it done. So wow. I haven't used it much over the holidays, but it's going well.
Wow, good for you.
I've just got to decide on the template. I can't get my template decided.
Bruce, you are?
Yep. So you'll get me on Twitter at Bruce1979, but you can find everything you need to know about me at Fuda, FUDA.me.
Excellent. That's a nice site. And finally, Brett?
Just at Brett Moller, MOLLER on Twitter, or brettmoller.com, which I bought before I got married and my wife controlled my money. So, yes. That's where you can find me.
Prior preparation prevents piss poor performance.
Excellent. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I will catch you all later.
Cheers. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
As always, you can download this episode and all the other episodes of the Virtual Staff Room podcast over at virtualstaffroom.net, where you'll find show notes and all sorts of other good stuff. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate the fact that you do that. That makes it all worthwhile. My name's Chris Betcher. Catch you later.